Quickly create great-looking WordPress sites with Gutenberg. A brief overview of this tutorial. Gutenberg is the name of the visual page builder that comes with WordPress since version 5, also known as the block editor. It allows you to create and edit site pages and blog posts in a drag-and-drop interface. There's also many other page builders you can add to your site to use instead of Gutenberg, like Elementor, Brizy, Beaver Builder, and others too. Even if you don't use Gutenberg much, it's important to become familiar with it as it's central to WordPress. So this tutorial has 3 main goals. Show you how to install and configure a site that works well with Gutenberg. Get you familiar and very productive with Gutenberg quickly. Show you how to extend Gutenberg and your site with plugins, themes, templates, and also services. So a very quick intro before we dive in. My name is Louis Allport. I'm based in the UK near London, and I've been in technical roles for over 20 years, initially starting as a localization engineer, which is the technical part of translating software and websites. In the internet's early days, I became very interested in all things web, learned to create sites, and went from there. These days, my focus is offering software training, consulting, and publishing as Allport Solutions. I use WordPress for my own sites and create, manage, and improve all types of WordPress sites for clients too. So with this very short intro out of the way, it's time to dive in. What you need to launch your site. What's required and what's optional. You need WordPress, of course. You need a theme for your site. Optional but recommended, a web hosting account, otherwise you can just practice on your computer. Optional but recommended, a domain so your site has a professional address. Optional but recommended, business email address rather than using a free email address for business. Optional, ready-made templates which make creating pages and sites much quicker. And plugins to add more design and functionality options to your site. Okay, so WordPress. WordPress is software and you'll need this to be installed for your website to run on WordPress. WordPress generally comes with your web hosting account, or you can just download it for free from wordpress.org. If you download it from wordpress.org, you'll need to know how to install it by hand, which is a lot more complicated than when your web host installs it for you. Web hosts that specialize in WordPress have WordPress already installed, of course. Web hosts that offer general hosting, not just WordPress, typically offer an easy install for WordPress since it's such popular software. So these days you generally don't need to install WordPress by hand, which saves you time and is much easier. But it also doesn't hurt to know how to install it by hand to give you a better understanding of WordPress and how it works. A theme. Although this isn't exactly accurate, let's say that a theme is the look of your WordPress site. There's thousands of free and paid themes you can install. Your site must have a theme active. It can't exist without one. Your site can only have one theme active at a time. Themes are generally either look specific, a theme where most if not all design decisions are made for you. For example, a theme for gardening businesses. Most of the decisions would be made, you just have to change your content and maybe add some photos. Flexible theme. These give you lots of options to customize the header, the footer, all sorts of things about the site, but this takes more time because there's a lot more decisions to make than a look specific theme. Or very basic theme, which is a simple theme that's meant to work in combination with a page or site builder. For example, the Hello theme and Elementor. Web hosting. The only reason you wouldn't need web hosting is if you're installing WordPress on your computer for practice. This can be quite complicated, but a good way to learn, using something like XAMPP. I've also heard it pronounced XAMPP, but let's call it XAMPP. If you aren't doing that, web hosting is needed. Web hosting is another way of saying web servers. They're computers designed to deliver your website to the world. Without web hosting, a web server, no one can access your website. If you really wanted to, you could run your home computer as a web server, but that's a bad idea for many reasons. You don't want people all around the world accessing your home computer. There's some free web hosting which may be good for practice, but don't depend on this, of course, because with free, you often get exactly what you pay for. One very important point about web hosting, and this is true about everything, but do keep this in mind, quality of service and support over time can improve or get worse. This happens for many reasons, but particularly when a web host is sold to another company. So use a web host you like, but always be mindful you may need to move if their service gets worse. So always control your own backups, and probably best not to register your domain at the same place you're hosting. Probably best actually to keep email, domain, and hosting all separate. Not essential, but it probably reduces some potential risk. There's lots of great web hosting for WordPress. Shortly I'll talk through ones I use and work with regularly. And a domain. If you're installing and working with WordPress on your computer, you don't need a domain. And if you're using a web host, most give you a temporary address while you're working on the site. Only when you're ready for your site to go live do you map the domain to your website. A domain is just $15 a year or so. Prices do vary. Remember, the domain is the address of your site, but doesn't get your site live. You need web hosting for your site to go live. So the combination of a domain and web hosting give you your unique address and a live website. There's no shortage of domain registrars, so find an established one with a good reputation. And again, probably best not to register your domain through your web host. Keeping things separate does reduce potential risk, I would say. Business email address. If you have your own domain, you might also want a business email like hello@domain.com. I personally would recommend this, as I think using a free email address for business use can look unprofessional. It also gives you more security regarding your emails and your email account. There's plenty of places to get business addresses, including Microsoft Exchange, for $4 a month as I record this. Having web hosting and business email in separate services can be a little bit fiddly to set up, but once it's done you won't need to change those settings unless you're moving providers. Ready-made templates. You don't need to design everything from scratch, as there's thousands of free and paid templates for Gutenberg. You can find one you like and import it into your site, or use sections of one template, sections from another template to create your own look. Your site won't look unique with this approach, but it works great, saves you time, and 99.9% of people won't know you're using a template. It's also a good way for you to learn how to create great looking pages in Gutenberg, and I'll talk through this in a lot more detail later. Once imported, you can then edit these templates a little, a lot, or just use them exactly as they are. Plugins. Plugins plug into your site to add more functionality, sometimes a lot more functionality. There's thousands of free and paid plugins, for example plugins to add contact forms to your site, speed your site up so it loads faster, help your site get found more easily in Google, add e-commerce functionality to WordPress. There's also lots of Gutenberg specific plugins to make the editor easier to work with and more powerful. Gutenberg by default can be quite limited in some ways unless you want to start diving into code, which we won't be talking about in this tutorial. Plugins can help you get a lot more out of Gutenberg. Don't overload your site with plugins though. Choose your plugins carefully and remove ones you're not using. Each plugin should have a very clear purpose for your site. More plugins means more code, and the more code there is running your site, the more things to go wrong. I've worked on sites with 50 or more plugins, and that is not a good idea and really not recommended. So let's talk through some of what you'll be using in more detail. So WordPress. As mentioned, this generally comes with your web hosting, but if you want to install it manually, either on your computer, which is an option, or install it manually on your web hosting, you can just download it. It's entirely free. So if you want to install and run WordPress on your computer, you'll need something like XAMPP or XAMPP, however it's pronounced, and it's beyond the scope of this tutorial to talk you through that, and it is, I would say, fairly technical. And it helps to understand how to install WordPress by hand if you're going to work this way. But this is a great way to practice running WordPress on your own computer. Themes. Okay, there's almost 11,000 free themes at WordPress.org. And you can just search for themes directly within WordPress, which I can show you as well. And there's thousands and thousands of paid themes as well. You would think paid themes offer more functionality, and maybe they do, but you would have to find the right one for you. And I would say it's fairly accurate, as I said previously, that you can break themes into 3 categories. Design specific themes. Now, for example, this comes with WordPress, built into WordPress in the default installation 2022, and it's limited. It's very limited. The design is kind of decided for you, and you just add your text and your images, but you can't do a huge amount more. Whereas something like Astra is a lot more flexible, but there's a lot more options, so it takes more getting used to, and a lot more decisions to make about what goes where on your site. But it's good software. Or Hello Theme, which is very, very basic, but its job is to work with Elementor Page Builder. So that's nothing to do with Gutenberg. That's a completely different page builder, which you install as a plugin. So this wouldn't be relevant in this tutorial. I mean, this would be, but again, it's very limited. If for Gutenberg, a theme like this, a flexible theme like this, or there's other ones as well. I think these are flexible, but I haven't actually tried them. I was looking for one in particular. I was looking for Ocean WP, if I can find it by scrolling. Okay, let me just search then, it might be easier. Ocean WP, I've tried that one in the past, and that's flexible as well. I would say Astra is a great choice. Maybe if there's time in this tutorial, we can also look at Neve. I want to say Neve. That's what you want. Easily customizable, multi-purpose. Let's take a very quick look at Generate Press. And we can try those later on. So, hosting. I have a DreamHost account. I actually have a VPS account, which allows you to host unlimited websites. It's good. You get email as well, so that's handy. And I've just contradicted my own suggestion, haven't I, of keeping hosting and email separate, because I've got my email with my web host. I mean, it's not an issue, but maybe it could be an issue at some point. So maybe I should separate those. But anyway, I get email and I get web hosting. And it's pretty decent. And that's where I work on sites and have some less important sites. When a site becomes important, I move it to different web hosting. So for example, DreamHost also offer DreamPress. And actually, let me just stress that with DreamHost, they've got easy WordPress install. Just a couple of clicks, you install WordPress very easy. Whereas DreamPress is hosting only for WordPress, so WordPress comes already installed, you don't need to install it. It's probably going to be quite a bit faster running WordPress on WordPress specific hosting, because WordPress specific hosting is designed to help WordPress sites load quickly. So you might want to look into those. I don't host with WP Engine, but lots of clients, or quite a few clients actually, I work with do. And they're they're WordPress specific. At the minute, when a site of mine, I'm trying to think of the right word, upgrades or becomes more important, then I'm moving it at the minute to Cloudways. And Cloudways doesn't just support WordPress, but it does support WordPress very well. It's got lots of good features and their servers are really quick, so I've been happy with them and they're reasonably priced. They take a bit of getting used to, in my opinion, because their control panels can be quite complicated, but once you're used to it, it's fine, which is true about anything, of course. And I've been happy with them, and yeah, as mentioned, I move my more important sites here. It's very easy for you to upgrade. You're probably going to get pricing in pounds here. No, dollars. Okay, that's fine. Because I'm in the UK, I thought it would be pounds. So for example, one of my sites is on the basic one, 1 GB, 1 core, for $14, so premium, and it's really fast. But I might upgrade at some point. It's very easy to upgrade. I put a client site on the 2 GB. It's still a little bit slow, which I'm looking into and trying to resolve that because his site's very complicated. It's slower than I want and slower than he wants, so that we may need to upgrade or also implement some other things to speed up the site. I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard good things about Rocket, so I'm going to try them as well. And they call themselves the world's fastest WordPress hosting, so we'll see. And speed is good for your visitors and for the search engines, because Google, I think they make it pretty clear they like fast sites. For domain, there's any number of places to register domain. I use Namecheap. They also offer hosting, but yeah, again, I did say you probably want to keep that separate. They do offer email. So if you want registrar, domain registrar and email, you can use something like Namecheap. It's very inexpensive. It's about $10 a year, I think. Okay, it's in pounds, which doesn't help you if you're outside the UK. But I think it's about $10 or $15 a year or something. So yeah, I've been quite happy with them. Or you can go for something like Microsoft Exchange, which is no, thank you. Where's pricing? I think I'm on US pricing. So yeah, $4 a month per email address. Yeah, per mailbox. So it's not the cheapest, and it is quite complicated, or can be quite complicated. But you get the stability and reliability of Microsoft, so there's that going for it. And just to very quickly talk through templates, there's lots of places to get templates, free and paid. I'm logged in. I forgot I was logged in. So Templately, let me log out actually. So yeah, that's the home page. So there's free ones and there's paid subscription as well. And theme forest, lots of Gutenberg. I'll talk through this again in more detail later. For plugins that extend Gutenberg, something like Spectra, which adds a lot of functionality to Gutenberg. Gutenberg can be quite limited and I think quite frustrating to work with by default. And plugins can make it a lot more powerful and, in my opinion, more bearable, because some of the ways it works quite frustrating in my opinion. And hopefully they'll get rid of those annoyances at some point, but who knows, maybe they won't. So this is very popular and very proven. And plugins that don't directly extend Gutenberg but extend your site overall, something like WP Forms, or there's lots of other form plugins which allow you to easily add contact forms and other types of forms to your website. And lastly, there's WooCommerce, which is a very powerful plugin that turns your site, or can turn your site into an e-commerce store, or just add e-commerce functionality if you don't want to completely recreate your site. And it's free and it's very powerful, but there's upgrades as well. Quite a few upgrades. But the free version is incredibly powerful. But yeah, we won't be talking through that because obviously it's beyond the scope of this tutorial. I'm trying to keep it fairly focused just on Gutenberg and getting the most out of Gutenberg. Okay, so that's an intro to what you need, or what you might decide that you need. Again, obviously you need WordPress. You don't need web hosting and domain and email if you're going to just run it on your computer. Or there is free web hosting as well. You can Google for free web hosting, see what comes up. I wouldn't run anything important on free web hosting for obvious reasons, but it might be good for testing. And your themes, you need a theme. WordPress comes by default with a theme, but then you can install any thousands of others and change your site that way. If you're not going to be running it on your computer, you need web hosting. Again, I don't recommend free hosting for anything except testing. So DreamHost or DreamPress, WP Engine, Cloudways, there's many others, but these are the ones I work with. Rocket comes recommended, haven't tried it yet, but may do in the near future. Again, you need a registrar if you're going to have a domain, so Namecheap or any other number of services, but obviously choose carefully, because that's, it's only $15 a year or whatever they charge, but it's the core of your business. Without a domain, your site can't exist. And then obviously email, you can get it through Namecheap or Microsoft or wherever else. And then templates and plugins, Gutenberg specific plugins and general plugins that extend your site. From now on, we're actually going to start getting practical and working directly in WordPress. The WordPress interface and recommended checks and settings. And I have these slides here just as a quick reference and also to help structure the video, so it helps me make sure I don't miss anything as I talk through it. So I'm going to cover WordPress Quick Start Guide, logging in as admin, your profile, the admin bar, the admin menu, recommended initial checks, tidy dashboard, that's just a personal preference of mine, check pages, check posts, check plugins, check themes, check users, check site health, recommended foundational settings, site title, site address, admin email, homepage, search engines, permalinks. Okay, let's go through that. Okay, I'm logged into my DreamHost account, and you can see, just go to WordPress, install WordPress, and where do I want to install it? Let's take a quick look at some advanced settings. So allportsolutions.com. Actually, I've changed it to demo.allportsolutions.com. And let's put it in, I think I've already got 3 tests. Let's put it in WP. Let's put it in WP. Yeah, it already exists. WP3 already exists, doesn't it? No. WP2 already exists. Okay, WP3 it is. So WP3, automatically create database, that's fine. And install. So this will take a couple of minutes. It is doing something, I promise. So I'll pause here until it's finished. Okay, so choose site purpose. We can choose some ready-made options, but I want it blank. So none. I want a clean install, so let's get rid of these recommended plugins. Okay, that just took a couple of minutes. That's how easy it is. And here's how it looks by default, which is not very interesting. So I need to log in. So I've been sent the details, so I need to get those. So to log into a WordPress site, generally, you just go to the website address. So this is the full address where it was installed. So it was installed in a, this is the obviously top level domain. This is the subdomain. So demo.allportsolutions.com. And here's the folder. So that's a full address. So generally you just go wp-admin, or you can do wp-login.php. Let me move that. So let's do wp-admin and login page. So let me get those details. Okay, so I click the link in the email, and I actually need to set my password the first time, which is absolutely right, and I neglected to mention that. Because obviously you shouldn't be emailing passwords. You shouldn't be sending passwords by email. So WordPress knows not to do that. So you click a link and then you set your password. And obviously everyone can see my password. So I'm gonna hide and generate. Okay, still showing. So I'm going to use a different one, of course, because I'm recording this. So I'll pause for a moment. Okay, I've got my password, save, log in. I'll just paste the password there. And let me just type in the username. Okay, there's the username. Yeah, remember me, why not? Remembers you for 14 days. That's the default in WordPress. So log in. Being a bit slow, as you can see, but okay, we got there. All right, the very first thing I do, and this is just a preference of mine, I go to screen options here. Actually, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so screen options. I don't like a cluttered dashboard. I mean, you may want some stuff here. I don't look at it and I don't like it, so just get rid of all this. I much prefer that. Okay. The top bar or the admin bar, actually we were going to talk about profile. Oh, it's brought my photo in automatically. So I'm an admin, so the site, any WordPress site has to have at least one administrator. Obviously the site can't function without someone managing it. So you would be the administrator. A site can have multiple administrators, but be careful about giving away an administrator level access because, I mean, for obvious reasons. I've seen sites where has maybe 10 administrators, which is way too many, and people move on and their administrator account never gets deleted. And that's a huge security flaw in the website. That's really bad. So keep on top of administrator logins. So edit profile, pretty basic options. Most of these I don't touch. I don't touch the color scheme. yeah, I mean, there's no point talking through these. You can play around with these if you want, but I never really touch them. I mean, first name and last name's very important if you're going to be doing blog posts. Display name publicly, because you want your name to display publicly, and that's not very helpful if you have a blog. So yes. And nickname, don't think it allows spaces. I think I'll be told off if I try to do that. Okay, I actually paused there and I changed my email in the site because it defaulted to an email I didn't want to use. So now my image is gone. Let's go back to the profile. So again, a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, and I don't really touch these, to be honest. So I don't want to waste too much time talking about things I never use, but you can do trial and error, of course. But anyway, let's go back to, first name, last name, nickname. It does allow a space, so that's fine. Display name publicly as, so that's the website. You can add biography and profile picture, set new password. So this is really to manage your administrator account. Again, a few settings here, but just for sake of curiosity, let's click on sunrise. Oh, it comes straight through. Okay. Ocean. Blue. Anyway, let's go by default. I'm used to that. The bar at the top, new post media page, just a bit of a shortcut, shows you if you've got comments or comments that need moderating. That's for updates, or you can just go to dashboard updates. Here, so you're in the admin area. If you click here, it takes you to the site. So I want the admin bar. Yeah, I want the toolbar. Show toolbar when viewing the site. So that's enabled. So I shouldn't need to save again. That shouldn't make any difference at all. So if I go to the site, there should be a bar here. Okay, it's being a bit weird. There we go. That's what I wanted. I had to refresh. So this is helpful, or shows you when you're logged in as admin, and it allows you to quickly work on the site. But you can turn that off if you don't want that. Click here to go back to the dashboard. Try again, click. Okay, so here's the menu, the admin menu. And as you install plugins and as you install themes, these options will change or become, this can expand a lot. But these are the defaults. So posts are blog posts. And actually updates, let me just show you that. If you need to update WordPress or any plugins, then it tells you there. You don't want to let things get out of date. So posts, there's just a default blog post. Okay, not very exciting. Media is images, videos, stuff like that. No media. Any pages? Sample page, let's take a quick look. Okay, not very interesting, but it's fine. Comments, I think there's one sample comment here, one sample comment. Appearance, that's where you choose theme. Let's ignore editor, that's diving into code and I don't want to talk about that. So let's stick with the point and click functionality. So themes. So 2023, 21, 22, these come with WordPress, or these are created by WordPress rather. They're pretty basic, but they're fine. You can easily add new, and I'll talk through that later. Plugins. Plugins. Let's just tidy that up a little bit. Don't need that right now. It comes with these two by default. That serves no purpose at all. And this one, do people use it? I don't know. People generally have comments turned off now. A lot of people have comments turned off, I would say. So you don't need comment spam protection. But anyway, it's there if you want it, but I usually get rid of it, to be honest. Okay, users, there should just be one user. And there is the administrator, which is me. So there's some tools there. Import, export, site health, settings. I'll talk through those in a minute. Okay, so what's next on the list? We've kind of gone through everything very quickly, but let's go back to posts. I mean, what I generally do, I delete that. There's no need for the sample post. I like to start fresh. And there's no media to delete, so nothing to do there. Get rid of the sample pages. There's a privacy policy example. But you probably want to get your own, but yep. Okay, I usually just select all, move to trash, start fresh. Appearance. I usually delete themes I'm not using. I mean, it can be helpful to delete stuff you're not using just to be tidy and for security. So I would click on that, delete, click on that, delete. So just got the one theme. And shortly I'll talk through installing a theme, but you can just add new, and there's all these available. So the one we talked through is Astra. You just do install. And actually, let me do that right now. Install, but it's not active. So if I go back to themes, it's there, but it's not active. So you can only have one theme active at a time. So you can do a live preview if you want. And it's imported a load of content, so that content was not there before. Anyway, let's close that. So plugins. I usually start fresh, so no plugins, delete everything. Users, yeah, just, you can add administrators if you want, or other types of users, but so tools. Let's take a quick look at site health. I mean, the site's going to be in good health because it's brand new. It's very clean. All plugins been deleted. It's got a clean theme. There's no content. I mean, you can't really get any healthier. It's all pretty much downhill from here. As you install plugins and work on the site, you've got to start being aware of more and more and keeping your site in a good state. Okay, it says you should remove inactive themes. Okay. That's a security recommendation. What's passed? Everything's passed. Up-to-date WordPress. Plugins are up to date. Well, there's no plugins. Theme is running PHP 7.4. Okay. And so on. So you may want to look through this and get an understanding of what's happening with your site. Info is just tells you about your server, tells you about WordPress. For example, WordPress version, WordPress language. And so on. So this is a good reference for exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Status is a good check for how your site can be improved in certain ways. So very important, settings general. So site title is the name of your site. That's incredibly important because it appears in lots of places. So in this example, I've just done Acme Consulting Inc. Tagline, you don't need a tagline. You can, the tagline of your business or your website, and it appears in several places on the site, and it depends on your theme, where it appears, how it appears. But I don't use this, to be honest. I mean, you can if you like, but it's not something I ever use. Can't really see the point myself. WordPress address, site address. Generally, this is going to be the same. And if it's not going to be the same, it's going to be for a very specific technical reason that you would ideally understand, or you would know exactly why you're doing it. So it's very rare, I would say, that these are different. And if they are different, it's a decision you've actively made because of how your site's set up. For my sites, these are the same, everything works fine. That's generally the case, I would say. Administration email address, very important. Make sure that's a valid email address and up-to-date email address. Some of these are only relevant if you have sites where people can log in, where people can create accounts and log in. So let's leave all those as they are. Date format, time format. Okay, that's fine. Okay, other settings. Settings writing. I don't really touch this, to be honest. You can choose a default post category. I generally leave this uncategorized and then just choose the category for each blog post. And I usually leave this as standard. You can experiment with different things if you want, but the defaults are there for a reason. I've never used this, ever. So I guess you can post by emailing WordPress or sending your post to an email address, but I don't know, it's probably easier just to log in and use WordPress. When you publish a new post, WordPress automatically notifies the following update services, so you can add more if you want. So I don't generally touch this page, to be honest. So reading. See, this is important, but there's another more important one as well, or even more important. So how many blog posts to show per blog page, if that makes sense? So you know when you visit a blog and it lists the blog posts, how many do you want to list per page? 10 or more? Let's leave it as the default. I don't think people use this so much anymore, but you can provide a feed of your blog posts so people can read your blog post without actually visiting your site via RSS. But I don't know how many people use that anymore. But anyway, it's there. For each post, include full post or an excerpt. So if people are viewing your content via feed instead of visiting your site, you could do an excerpt, and then they need to click to visit your site. Okay, this is so important. Amazing. Such a tiny little option has such a big impact. Do that, and your site will never get found in the search engines. That's it. Nobody will ever arrive to your site through the search engines. So I generally have this. There might want to be a bit more of a warning, actually, when you click this, because it's pretty important. But anyway, so I generally have this on. So I keep a site out of the search engines while I'm working on it, and then when I'm ready for people to visit, turn it off. And obviously it takes a while for Google to find the site and index the site and rank the site and so on. But that's a very important setting. Discussion. I'd never touch this, to be honest. I usually have comments turned off. If I didn't have comments turned off, I'd give this serious thought. But I mean, comments are good, but on the other hand, it creates so much extra work with the moderation and the spam and everything else. So if you want to enable comments, you have a lot of flexibility about options here. But I think a lot of people just turn comments off. Media. I generally leave these as default, but these are the default sizes of images, because any image you upload gets converted into 3 sizes, so thumbnail, medium, large. And obviously you want to upload an image that's large or bigger than large, if that makes sense. But you don't want a small image to be made larger because it'd be blurry. You want a big image to be made smaller. So you can change these default sizes if you want. And uploading files, by default, it organizes them into months and years. You can turn that off, but it puts everything in one folder, which can become rather cluttered. So let's leave it as default for now. If you turn that off, you probably want to create your own folders for uploading images. That's a separate conversation. This is fine for now, I would say. Okay, I'll come to one of the most important ones last. Let's go to privacy. Just trying to get you to set up a privacy page, and then you can create it, and then you specify which page on the site is the privacy page. And there's lots of terms and conditions, disclaimers, refund policy, privacy policy, templates online. You can pay for them, of course, and I'm sure there's free ones as well, but make sure they're relevant for, I guess, where you live. But anyway, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really help you there, but there's lots of sites online where you can copy and paste those. You know, they're either giving them away for free or they sell them quite inexpensively as template kits. Okay, permalinks. You got to get used to this terminology. It's a bit odd. So basically, this part of the link between 2 forward slashes or at the end is called the slug. So that's, actually, let me get rid of that. So that would be the slug, or that would be the slug, or that wouldn't, that's the site. The permalink is, so this is the actual website address. Everything after that is a permalink. That's the entire thing is a permalink. You can choose the structure of that here. But I would say generally people just choose this. You could do date and name, month and name, numeric. I don't know why anyone would leave this one because it's not very nice to look at. People generally do post name, I would say. Or you can do, blog and then post name. But let's go with this. I usually go with this, and then we can always tweak it if need be, but that's absolutely fine. And you can do some tags here, so you can post name, day, if you want to create your own, hour, minute. Anyway, let's go back to post name. And you can choose a base category and base tag, but don't really use that to be honest, but you can choose that if you wish. So anyway, let's save. So that's very important. So really, the most important settings are permalinks and this little option, which makes all the difference, and the site title, obviously, and the URLs. Those are the most important, I would say, and that's important too as well. So that's what I generally do with a brand new site. So I just tidy up and apply the most important settings, and then I can start working on the site. And we've already installed Astra, haven't we? Haven't activated it, but I've installed it, so we can start work immediately. Gutenberg Editor Fast Start, also known as the block editor. Getting to know Gutenberg. The Gutenberg editor replaced what's now known as the classic editor in WordPress 5. It's a visual page editor similar to page editors like Elementor and Divi, but is built directly into WordPress. Gutenberg has its quirks, I will admit, but it's good software and continues to improve, and it's important to learn and get used to it if you work with WordPress. Every element on the page, on a Gutenberg page, becomes its own block, displaying alongside all the other blocks on the page. Such blocks can include a headline block, so a headline of the page is one block, a text block, so each paragraph is a text block, an image is its own block, and so on. This modular approach helps the content of the page rearrange itself automatically depending on the screen size. And you can also have blocks within blocks within blocks. So a row may contain columns, and columns can contain paragraphs, and so on. And I'll talk through all this visually in a moment. Some key functionality and terminology. So I'm just going to run through this very quickly, and then we'll actually demonstrate it. So don't worry too much if I go through this very quickly, but just useful terms to keep in mind. Block inserter, for inserting blocks. Block settings, settings for each block. List view. Toolbar, visual editor, which is what most people work in, I would say, but you can also work in the code editor. Reusable blocks, pretty self-explanatory, but I'll talk through those as well. Block patterns, the edit tool, select tool, spotlight mode, full screen mode, block breadcrumbs, pre-published checklist, and so on. That doesn't cover everything, but it's fine as a very, very quick introduction. So let's actually get practical and start working in Gutenberg. Okay, I'm in the dashboard of demo site WP3, and it's completely blank. Okay, actually, let me just remind, which theme are we using? Okay, we're using 2023. And that's fine for this particular tutorial. All pages, I think I deleted them, yes. And there's no posts as well, because Gutenberg works with pages and with blog posts. Okay, so add new, or add new, either way, same difference. So here we go. Right, so where to start? Let's approach this logically. So obviously this is the title of the page. This is where the blocks start. And every page has at least one paragraph block. What I'm going to do actually, maybe I'll go to preferences first, or settings and preferences. So here, so top toolbar. Actually, let me just show you that. So here I'm in a paragraph block. There's the toolbar. You can unstick it. So if you turn this off, the toolbar, then let me type something. It kind of floats. I don't think I really like that. I think a lot of people don't like that, but you may like that. So the reason for settings is for personal preferences. But let's stick it to the top. It's kind of out of the way. And that's wrong. Let's try again. There we go. Spotlight mode. Just watch what happens. Actually, let me make it a little bit more obvious. There we go. And another helpful paragraph. So all the focus goes onto the block you're working on, and all the other blocks kind of fade into the background. So you may find that helpful for working on the site, or maybe especially when you're writing. But let's turn that off. Full screen mode is on by default. It gives you more screen space, but if you turn it off, you get the menu here on the left, which I often find that helpful, because you can immediately go somewhere else. Whereas, no, there we go. Full screen mode is on. You have to click away first, and it's asking me to save changes. And then you have to navigate to where you want to go. So it's just an extra step. So you may like the extra space on the screen, but it just means an extra click. So it's not a big deal, but there you go. That's an option. Distraction free is even more dramatic than spotlight mode. Everything kind of disappears except the content of the page. So you may like to work like that as well. And if you hold your mouse near the top, things start to appear. Let's bring back more to the screen. There we go. Yeah, I don't want floating toolbar. I thought we already did that. Okay. So yeah, visual editor, code editor. I mean, you may end up working here, but we're not going to be talking about that because that's a completely different topic, really. So visual editor. And you can see all of these, or a lot of these, have keyboard shortcuts. I mean, this is the exactly easy one. So Control Shift Alt F. Okay, you have to try to remember that. 4 keys to press. But yeah, anyway, there's some hotkeys here, some key combinations. Manage reusable blocks. Let's not talk about that yet. Keyboard shortcuts. Click on that, and it tells you all of them. Welcome guide. Okay, with that you could click on that at some point if you want. Copy all blocks. Helpful if you want to copy the contents of the page from one page to another page. So that's it. All content copied. And preferences. Okay. So general, pre-published checklist. If we turn that on and exit, if you publish, it asks you again, are you absolutely sure? Publish. Whereas, if you turn that off, okay, I need to make a change, otherwise it won't let me save. Update, there we go. No confirmation this time. So some of this is what we've already talked through, distraction 3, spotlight mode, show button text labels. This is a bit of a weird one. I mean, you can do this if you want, but it just starts to look a bit odd. It replaces all the images with just text. I don't like that, but it's an option. And okay, no. Always open list view. Yeah, I like that. Theme styles. Generally, I would say you want your pages to match your theme, because that makes sense. You can turn it off if you wanted to. I would have that on by default, and then if you really want to change the look, then maybe think about turning that off, but leave it by default, I would say. Block breadcrumbs. It's these, it's not very exciting. I don't really use them, but they might be a little bit helpful. It just tells you where you are in the structure of the page. Okay, so we've talked about that. Blocks. You can show most used blocks if you want, so it might be a bit of a shortcut. Contain text cursor. Okay, this isn't immediately obvious what it's saying here. Let me show you. So we'll go to a paragraph. Okay, I'm going left and I'm not moving. I'm stuck in this paragraph, so I'm stuck in this block. I actually like that. And also if I do Control A to select all, if I do Control A again, it does still select the entire page. I thought it would lock me within that block. But sometimes I press Control A more than once just because I don't know why. And it does select the entire page, which I don't really want most of the time. If I wanted to do that, I'll just do copy all blocks. Anyway, so what that setting does, if you turn it off, you can just keep going left into the next block. I don't really like that, but anyway, that's just a preference. So let's turn it back on. So you can hide blocks if you want. I mean, I can't really see the point, because if you need to find something, you generally search for it anyway, as you'll see in a moment. Panels. I mean, you need page attributes, you need featured image. If you've got comments turned off, you don't need that, but I mean, might as well leave it on. Custom fields wouldn't be relevant a lot of the time, so I would just leave those on, really. Okay, so this is, you can toggle between page settings. So let's collapse these. So page attributes, parent page, it doesn't have a parent. If you have a page within a page within a page, like for example, well, actually, let me give you an example. This is the top level page. Actually, no, excuse me. Let me give you a better example. Let's say about is the top level page, and then the sub page. So top level pages are like sections of your website, and about could be history, and it could be personnel. That's right, isn't it? I think that's right. It's for spelling. Personnel could be services. So pages and sub pages. So in this case, if I was creating the services page, the parent page would be about. Let's press escape to get rid of all that. Order, that's the order you view the pages, but it's not very helpful. And actually, I mean, since I've mentioned it, I'll just show you a better way of working with that later. Okay, discussion, allow comments is turned off by default. Good. Featured image. Now, for example, let's say if you visit a site that's all blog posts. Some sites are still just blogs and nothing else. You visit the front page as 10 blog posts. You usually get the headline of the blog post, an image, and a selected section of the blog post, and then you have to click to read more. That image is called the featured image. It's the image that represents your page or your post across the site. So that's quite important often. So it doesn't always appear in the actual page or the actual post. It depends on the number of things, but doesn't always appear there. But it can appear across your site, so that's important. Summary, okay, public, when's it published? It's a page, let's not get too complicated now. URL, that's a terrible URL. So click on that. I haven't given the page a name, have I? Test page. That will do. So let's call it a test page. Okay, and let's go to block settings. So I'm here. Yeah, which is a title, which isn't a block. Important to be aware of that. Let's go to a paragraph. Block settings. Okay, actually I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So yeah, remember here, that toggles settings, page and block, preview. So I've saved it. You can switch it back to draft mode if you want, which unpublishes a page. It allows you to keep working on it, but it unpublishes it. And preview, you can preview in mobile. And it does a preview here. You can also click on preview a new tab, but that's desktop only. So let me come back to that. So mobile or tablet or desktop, and then preview in new tab. So desktop, previewing in new tab. You can press F12 on a PC or right click, inspect. I don't know what it is on a Mac, because I don't have a Mac. So inspect, and all this complicated stuff appears. But basically, if you click here, it sort of goes full width, and you can move that over a little bit. And then you do it again, and you can choose the device. So Pixel 5, there's the mobile menu with no items because we don't have a menu yet. Surface Pro 7. So yeah, you can play around with that. So that's in Chrome, in the web browser Chrome. Okay, so we've talked about that. So I'll talk about this more in a moment, but this just affects the block you're working on. Okay, so this section is very important. So this is there you go, block inserter. Now I personally wish that it was sticky, because I don't like it keeps making the page jump about, but that's just a preference. But if I drag and I don't like these flashes, these pop-ups, I find it a bit annoying. But anyway, if I drag a heading, and you see what happens if I click here, I want to change it to H3, for example. Immediately, I lose the block insert and the page jumps, and I haven't clicked on anything, which is annoying, but that's just my preference. So it'd be nice if they fix that at some point. Okay, so block inserter. So there's lots here, most used. And then text, so paragraph, heading, list, etc., etc. Gives you little examples here, and you can just drag them in and play around with them. So media, so image, gallery, audio, video, design, buttons, columns, groups, widgets. Widgets are kind of ready-made functionality, like a list of pages, blog post archives, things like that. Theme, specific to your theme logo, site logo rather, site title, and so on. Okay. And embeds from YouTube or wherever else. Okay, so you can search here. Search for text, for example. And you can even take the classic editor if you want to do that. And have the classic editor. That's how it looks. As part of your page, if you want to do that for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about block settings in just a moment, but just before that, let's talk through the rest of this section. So tools, there's only two. Actually, let's get rid of the block inserter. It says edit, which I would say you spend most, probably 95, 98, 99% of your time in. So you just click where you want to edit. Very easy. Or you can obviously go up and down using the cursor. Actually, I can't go up and down using the cursor keys, can I? Because I'm locked in each block. So let's actually turn that off. So then I can use the up and down cursors to move around the page. Your select tool, hardly ever use it. It's just you can click on blocks to select. And then you can drag and move it. Maybe I'm missing something else, but that seems to be the only time you use it. Let's go back to edit. Well, actually, if I click here, okay, there you go, click here, and I've automatically gone back to the edit tool anyway. Undo is undo, but it doesn't always work that well, I've noticed. Doesn't seem to work 100% of the time, so be a little bit careful. Okay, this is hugely important. I wouldn't use Gutenberg without it. It shows you the structure of your page. It's so helpful. It shows you exactly what's going on, and you can click and drag and move stuff as well. You can select multiple by holding down Shift. It shows you the outline as well. But outline is really just the title and the headings. So if I make this heading 1, no, what did I click on? Heading 1. And then I can duplicate it. Actually, no, let's do it properly. So heading 2. Let's duplicate it this time. Because duplicate. I'll show you that in a moment. Make this H3. Okay, go back to here. Document overview, outline. It just shows you your page structure, which you may find helpful. But yeah, list view I find absolutely invaluable, and I couldn't use Gutenberg without it. So yeah, this menu next to each block is also here when you click on any block. So pretty self-explanatory. A copy block or copy and paste, duplicate, insert before, insert a block. It will be the paragraph block by default. So if I'm right at the top of the page and no title, I'm on the wrong thing. Heading, I want heading. So insert before adds a paragraph. Very exciting. Insert after adds a paragraph. Move to is another way of moving. You just click where you want it to go. Edit as HTML. We're not going to talk through that, but that is an option if you want to work in HTML in the actual code. Okay, I need to turn that back off. Copy styles, paste styles. So after you've actually applied some changes to a block, which I'll talk through in a moment, you can copy and paste. You can lock a block. Create reusable block. But obviously, it makes no sense just to copy one block, I would say. You can have one block as a reusable block, but generally you would select a whole bunch of them which should be together and create reusable block. But a reusable block is like a collection of blocks, and you can use it again and again and again. But if you change it in one location, it changes in every other location it's used. If you create a reusable block and use it in every single page of your site, if you change it once, it will change it across every single page. So be aware of that. A group is different. It's a group of blocks. And yeah, I will talk through that in a second. Remove blocks. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. So what we haven't talked through, very importantly, is all the block settings. And is it just me, or is it difficult to actually see this properly because of the color scheme? And it's... Okay, no. But this little thing here, it hides all this from you. I don't know why it hides all this. I need to select all these if I want them to appear in the settings. It's a frustrating way to work, in my opinion. Advanced, I know I'm jumping about a bit, but I'm just trying to think about the most logical way to talk through this. Advanced, let's forget about that. Dimensions. Again, that's just another way of hiding stuff from you. So, I don't know, to me it makes sense to just show as much as possible, and then you can actually decide what you want to do rather than having stuff hidden away. Okay, so color the text, pretty self-explanatory. Let's choose purple, why not? Color the background, and obviously here you've got a lot more, oops, let's try that again with a bit more control. You've got more control. Okay, these are awful colors, but anyway, this is just a demonstration. And you can do a gradient if you want. Okay, so stuff to play around with there, and then the color of the links. Okay, typography. Can't actually see the text, so I need to fix that. Let's make the text black. Okay, you can see the font change. And the size, these are default: small, medium, large, extra large, XXL. Ooh, that's way too big. That's a big jump between those two. Okay. Or you can have more control by using this. I mean, pixels, everyone knows what a pixel is. So 18 pixels, that's too small. 30 pixels. And these are more web design specific terms, which I won't get into the definition of, but feel free to Google M and REM. But anyway, pixels is fine, as long as you're a little bit careful. But as you can see, actually let's try putting it to mobile. Oh wow. Classic really messed up mobile. Cancel that. Yeah, you can't choose a different size. If I take this to 20 for mobile, 20 pixels, go back to desktop, it stays at 20 pixels, which isn't helpful, because you should be able to choose different sizes for different screen sizes, because a headline that looks good on desktop could look massive on mobile. So, some default appearances there, bold, so on. Line height, letter spacing, decoration, so strike through. No, that's none rather, excuse me. That's strike through, that's underline. Letter case, dimensions, we need to add that back again for some reason. Okay, padding and margin adds extra space. So this adds extra space everywhere on all sides. You've got much control really. But then we've got more control this way by clicking on that. So top right, you can choose them. Even more control by doing that and typing in 20 pixels, for example. So it allows you to add spacing left, right, above, below. So padding and margin. And advanced we don't need to talk about because that's dealing with code, which we're not going to talk through here. Okay, so something I glossed over earlier. Copy styles. Let's go to this heading and paste styles. There we go. Okay, so a lot of this will just be trial and error. So trying out different blocks, playing around with the settings, trying to replicate existing pages you see. But I find patterns helpful, so I'm actually going to get rid of everything on the page. So let's go to Document Overview, go to the top one, hold down Shift, go to the bottom one, and I can do it there. I can do it there. Okay, we're back to just one paragraph. And actually, excuse me, let's undo that. Let's see how good undo is. Okay, good, we're back. One thing I neglected to mention is you've also got this, which is kind of, and this toolbar is kind of an extension of the block settings. So some settings are here, some settings are here. So you've got to look in two places. You can move it up and down the page using that. Actually, let me do list view so you can see that a bit clearer. You can do that. So full width is full width of the page. Wide width, okay, is 1200 pixels. That's only 650 pixels. Okay. Actually, let me close list view, be a bit more obvious. So that's 650 pixels. That's 1200 pixels. Let's close this as well. 1200. That's full width. Okay, so let's put it back to 650. You can change it from heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Basically, heading 1 is your most important heading of the page. And then these are subheadings of progressively less importance. They help structure the page, and they may help with SEO as well, potentially. And align is left, right, middle. Pretty self-explanatory. Bold, we have to select it first. Select. It's not letting me select, that's weird. What's going on? Okay, that I can select. So bold. Or not bold. Italic. Add a link to some of it or all of it. And there's more settings here. Highlight, inline code, so highlight, we need a color. So yeah, let's try that again. So no, we don't need to specify text again, do we? So black text, background is, so this is similar to these settings, to the block settings, but importantly, the background here is background of the entire block. So background of the entire block versus background of just the text. So highlight just the text, inline code, inline image. Okay, so what I was going to show you, if I get rid of everything, hold down Shift from top to bottom. Block inserter, padding patterns. So these are ready-made kind of bunches of blocks, basically. Block patterns specifically, but they're kind of bunches of blocks together. And they may or may not be relevant to you, but it's a good way to learn. But that's the thing with Gutenberg. When you just look at it, it's not very helpful. You don't really know what's going on. So you have to go to list view, see exactly what's happening. Okay, so we've got a cover, and then you can see the settings here. That's headline, heading 2. Columns, so columns start to structure your page into columns. But you may not, of course, want everything in just one column. So columns, and then column and column, so the 2 columns. So column 1 has a spacer, which is just some extra space, and a paragraph with some text. Column 2 has nothing. And importantly with columns, this setting stack on mobile. That's very important, because if we preview on mobile, yeah, it just puts one on top of the other. If we didn't do that, that's what happens. You have 2 columns and the text gets really squashed. But yeah, other editors or other Gutenberg blocks you can add, which I'll talk through. I mean, you can hide columns on mobile, because this is just a, let's go back to preview, desktop rather. This second column is just to create some space. It has no other use, it's just to push this text over to the left basically. But you don't want that on mobile, so often Elementor, for example, allows you to hide this column on mobile, which is useful. I mean, it's not too big a deal in this instance on mobile. It just creates a bit of extra space. But there's nothing in the column, so that should be fine. Okay, so outline, no, not outline, excuse me, list view. And actually, let's just collapse everything, select and remove. So that's a good way to start to see exactly how pages or sections of pages are put together. Featured, featured. Let's just pick one at random. Okay, there's not too many of them. Trying to find a somewhat complicated one. That looks quite interesting. Let's take a look at that. Okay. And as a test to yourself, you could start to think, without looking at the document overview, how is this put together? But it's a bit difficult to tell. So let's go to document overview. Okay, so they've used cover again. So you can look at those settings. And what you could try to do actually is in one page, open these patterns, and then in another page, just copy step by step exactly what they've done to get into practice of actually creating pages. Just copy, starting with a blank slate and copying an existing Gutenberg page. I mean, not a live website, it doesn't have to be a live website, it can be a pattern or a template. Just copying it in another page completely from scratch is really good practice and will help you understand why designers make certain decisions. So group is a group of blocks, so spacer. Let's just take a quick look. Interesting. So the background is a gradient, but with no... If we do that, okay. There's no fade between them. It's just 2 colors. So that's the background. Then the spacer, that's self-explanatory, just make some extra space. So this group, actually, there's space on either side. So 600 by 1200. Okay. So if we start playing around with that, I'm just using the up arrow on the keyboard. starts to make the content wider. So spacer, we've talked about image. So you click on it and replace. You can replace the image. So open the media library. There's nothing there. So you can play around with these settings as well. And something I didn't actually show you, you can transform blocks. You can just click on there to transform. So you can only change certain types of block to other certain types of blocks. You can't turn an image into a paragraph because that's impossible. You can turn a paragraph into a heading, for example. So what else? Spacer again, etc. Oh no, that's the heading. So you see you can transform a heading into a paragraph if you wish to do that. So I find patterns helpful for starting to understand design and how it's implemented in Gutenberg. There's also media, which is just images basically, the open verse, because there's no images on the site. So we can import images from there if we want. And what you can also do, because again, practice is important, maybe find a page you like, and this might be quite a bit of a challenge. Find a page you like and try to recreate it in Gutenberg. And to be completely frank, by using the default Gutenberg blocks, you will be limiting yourself quite a lot, or you will be doing things in a somewhat more difficult way than you need to. But some of these blocks can be quite limited in quite a number of ways. But that's kind of an overview of Gutenberg, but really, if you really want to start getting productive with it, you need practice, and patterns are helpful for getting practice, understanding how designs are created, and just recreating that design in a new page, and templates, which I'll talk through, and trying to recreate sites you see. Because really, a lot of sites are just, this sounds completely obvious, but it's just rows and columns. That's all it is. It's rows. Within those rows, it's columns. That's basically it. But then the color schemes, the fonts, the images people use all start to make it look unique. And then you can start to overlap columns and even rows a little bit, which start to sort of blend things a little bit more. But really, a page is just rows and columns. Like, for example, here, list view. Well, this is just, there's no specific columns here. But there's one big background row. And then there's the group, which is just one column, basically. So within this background row, even though it's not called a row, it's called a cover in this case. Within this background row, we have one column sort of in the middle with a lot of spacing on all sides. And then an image and a header. And that's pretty much it. But it's not implemented as columns and rows. In this case, it's implemented as a cover and a group. So yeah, that's a really good way to start. So I'm sure I've missed little bits of Gutenberg, but I've tried to cover as much as possible and tried to talk through it somewhat logically. But that's kind of the interface. That's how it works. And it is well worth getting used to and playing around with, and create your own designs or replicate designs. And it's all really good practice. But you will find you hit limitations. By using the default blocks of Gutenberg, you are limited. You can achieve a lot, but you are limited. It is important to practice and get familiar with it and get comfortable with it. And then you can start adding more blocks and working from templates and so on and achieving a lot more. So it is good software. It does have I do find it frustrating in some ways, and by default it's powerful, but it is also somewhat limiting. But because you can expand on Gutenberg so much by adding extra blocks, by importing templates, you can achieve a huge amount with it. And then beyond that, depending on the theme you've chosen, you can achieve even more with your site. In something like Astra, which I'm going to talk through a little bit more later, but not too much because there's a lot of detail there. That's very flexible, so you can customize the header of your site, the footer of your site, choose which pages have sidebars, and so on. So adding blocks to make Gutenberg even more powerful, and a powerful theme allow you to create a great site with a lot of flexibility. Extend Gutenberg with these plugins. Gutenberg with and without plugins. Gutenberg without any extensions or extra blocks can be great but also somewhat limited. It works fine, but then to really get more out of it, you will need to start coding your own Gutenberg blocks, which isn't the focus of this course at all. You can install extra blocks through the block directory and also by adding new blocks through plugins. There's also other plugins that can be helpful when working in Gutenberg. For example, I use one which shows you the outlines of every block, which I often find helpful for navigating the page. Okay, we're back in the demo site. So let's look at pages. Just got a test page which should be empty. And it is. So we've just got Gutenberg as normal for now. Okay, so I'm going to try something. To be perfectly frank, it worked for me once and then another day it didn't work for me. So the theory is, if you search for a block which you don't have, Gutenberg then looks in the block directory, which is a public directory of other blocks. So let's try testimonial. No. Let's try team, for example. So let me just explain what's meant to happen. Here you go. Block directory, how to use the block directory. Select the plus, we did that. Type in the keyword. So block inserter, type in the keyword, like team or staff. WordPress first searches the current site. And if it doesn't find a block, it looks in the block directory. And it worked for me once, and it's not working for me anymore. There you go, that's how it's meant to work. No. So just out of curiosity, I'm just going to try it on another site, just to see if it's specific to this site. Okay, here's another site. Just have a quick test. Testimonial. No. Team, that's the example they give. No. So I don't know. For whatever reason, it's not working for me. Maybe it's not working for everyone. Maybe it's just temperamental. I don't know. Anyway, all it really does is go to the WordPress plugin directory. And actually, let me do it through this site. So I'll close the other demo site. Let's go to plugins. So all it's really doing is looking here for specific blocks. For example, testimonial block. There you go, testimonial block. So that's just one extra type of block you can add. And that's how the block directory is meant to work. Maybe it works for you, it's not working for me. And it hasn't for quite a few weeks. But we've actually ended up in the perfect place, because we do need to install some blocks. Some groups of blocks. So actually, let's just search for Gutenberg blocks. And there's lots of options, as you can see. I'm going to be talking through Spectra and Cadence. So I've got them both installed, but I've got them deactivated. So let's start with Spectra. And actually, just before I do that, let's double check which theme I'm using. Like I'm using Astra. And Astra and Spectra are from the same company, from the same business, so they're a good combination. Let's go to plugins. Spectra. Actually, let's just update stuff. Let's get stuff right up to date. And activate Spectra. Okay. Anything to see here? Not really. So these are all the blocks, all the extensions added. So some are pro, which we don't have access to. So you would need to pay for those. And you can turn off blocks you don't want if you want to do that. So that's all core blocks, creative blocks, content blocks. Activate all, deactivate all. Extensions. Interesting. So these aren't blocks. Like for example, display conditions isn't a block, it's functionality which has been added to your site. So you can choose when or not certain content displays. That's interesting. And settings, let's take a quick look. Okay, lots of settings here. Default content width. So yeah, let's go with the defaults for now. Let's go to a page. Actually, the one and only page on the site. So as you can see, new items have appeared on the page. So let's go through this logically. Let's look at the menu here. So Spectra page settings, Astra settings, and remember those two work together. We don't need to talk through Astra really now, that's the theme. There's some theme specific settings here for this page. Content layout, sidebar, and so on. Let's go back. Astra settings, we've got that enabled. Anything else? Reusable blocks, keyboard shortcuts, yeah, that's all pretty standard. Let's look in preferences. Anything Spectra specific? No. All the Spectra blocks are here. So you can turn them off. You can turn them off and on here as well if you choose. Okay, so that's Astra settings. These are Spectra page settings. And there's very little here. Basically some code you can add there if you want to, but we're not going to talk about that. That's not particularly helpful. That is helpful, Astra settings. Then these are the standard page settings, so these haven't changed. Block-specific settings, of course, become relevant once you start adding blocks. So what else is new? Well, this is interesting. So we can toggle between editing in tablet view, editing in mobile, tablet, desktop. Template kits we're going to talk about later. So let's see which new blocks we've got. There we go, Spectra. It tells you a bit about it if you hover over it. Interestingly, Spectra puts rows and columns into one block called container. But as you can see, there's no other row or column blocks. If we drag that in, it gives you some ready-made options, but you can also customize it further. And this looks like it's on 2 rows. But when you click on it, it just comes in. Okay, I have to click on it again because immediately the page jumped, which is frustrating. So let's click on it again. So here in General tab, there's container settings in the container panel. And lots of settings as you can see. So custom width, minimum height, and so on. You'll want to play around with these and see how they work and see what you like. And again, look at existing designs and try to replicate them with these blocks. And as mentioned, I'll also talk through template kits, which is a shortcut for creating sites and also learning how to create sites, but we'll cover that later. So this to me is this is how I'm used to working. This to me is a much more logical way than the default Gutenberg blocks with the 3 dots and the settings keep disappearing, stuff like that. This is less frustrating for me, and this is how I'm used to working, so I'll be more productive using something like this. And just out of curiosity, so we're in the Style tab with background open. If I click away to container, another container. Actually, let's click on heading. So it takes me to General tab with content. If I go back here, it takes me back. So that it does remember, or does seem to remember what I'm working on. So that's helpful as well, and that's going to save time and helps you be more productive. And very importantly, next to, for example, width settings, height settings, you can configure different settings for different screen sizes, which is absolutely vital. Because the width for desktop, tablet, and mobile are likely going to be different. So that is very important. Okay, so that's a quick intro to Spectra. We'll save what we've done and exit. Go to plugins. Turn off Spectra. Turn on Cadence. Okay, actually I'll close a couple of these tabs. Right, so back to the page. Edit. So now we're getting these errors. That's because it's a Spectra block and we've turned off Spectra. So Gutenberg doesn't know what to do with it. So you get this unsupported, unsupported, and all these unsupported. So we'd have to remove that, of course. And you can probably have Spectra and Cadence working on the same page. I don't know how well the different blocks interact with each other. So actually, I mean, for example, okay, so we've got a blank page. And here's the Cadence blocks. What happens if we had a row layout and then added a Spectra container? How would Gutenberg deal with that? So, well, is it best to keep them well away from each other? So maybe something to try. So you can see here it's different. It's separated out rows and sections. So rows and sections are columns, effectively. And what have we got here? Okay, we don't want to transform. What other settings do we have? What's this? Oh, add another section. Interesting. See, let's get rid of that. How do I get rid of that? Remove? Good. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look again. Let's look in the main menu first, or this menu. What's changed? Cadence box controls. Anything in preferences? It doesn't look as if it's made any changes here. But you can see all the blocks there and you can turn them off if you want. Okay. So what have we got? Cadence box controls, let's take a quick look. So Cadence color palette. Block visibility. Again, do you want to hide or show blocks and components? Import, export block settings. Okay. So that's that. Okay, so row layout. So again, similar sort of style, but it's not collapsible in this case. It's got the tabs. You see all the settings. Oh no, excuse me, it is collapsible. Just the top one isn't collapsible. Okay, so that's collapsible. Okay, so columns 6. What happens if we keep... Okay, we can't go beyond 6, alright. Can make it a grid. Okay. And lots of settings here, as you can see. And let's look for... There we go. There's the responsive settings. So settings for desktop, tablet. and mobile. Style, okay, that's collapsible, so that's nice, that's easier to see. Advanced. Okay, interesting. Alright, so that's row. Section, accordion, advanced gallery, and so on. So you want to play around with these as well and see how you get on. So let's just click on it out of curiosity. But I think this is getting to this is getting to templates now, which I'm going to cover later. Okay, what's it doing? Okay, something's coming through. Okay, good. Alright, I'll talk about that later. Oh, I need Cadence Blocks Pro. Oh no, that one does. Okay. Alright, just as I wrap this up, just out of curiosity, what I'm going to do, I'm going to activate both plugins, save the page and refresh. Let's see what happens. Okay, so Spectra comes first, and then Cadence. So let's see, so a Cadence row, and okay, there we go, finally. The Cadence row, let's see what happens, and a Spectra container. Ooh, not sure what happened there. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it might be safest not to. It's probably fine having all these blocks on the same page as long as they don't clash, so maybe do keep them away from each other. Okay. Alright, so that wraps up adding extra blocks to your Gutenberg site and making Gutenberg much more powerful. And that's really the power of Gutenberg, is its flexibility. Because as we saw earlier, by default, it's quite limited and can be quite frustrating, in my opinion. But once we start adding plugins like this, blocks like this, it suddenly becomes a lot more powerful, a lot easier to work with, a lot more productive. Working with Gutenberg templates. Design from scratch, get inspired, or use templates. You can design every page and site from scratch if you would like, without even considering other sites. This is rare, I would say, if not impossible, since you would have to forget every other site you've visited. The closest thing to this approach is working with the designer, where they create a mock-up design for your site and then you recreate that design in Gutenberg. So without copying outright, of course, you can visit sites you like and try to recreate them in Gutenberg, or use them as a starting point for ideas for creating your own unique site. To be frank, no one really gets too experimental with sites these days, I would say. The days of flash animation welcome pages are long gone, which may be a good thing. But colors and images are where the real customization is. If you're not naturally artistic, or if you're not working with a designer, being inspired, again, not copying, from other sites can be one solution. And there's lots of free and paid Gutenberg templates. You can just import these and then change them, or even work with them as they are. You can always start with a template, build out your site, then customize it over time. The version of the site you launch does not have to be how it looks in a year, in 2 years, and so on. Okay, back in the demo site. Let's edit. And I've got Cadence and Spectra installed. So design library for Cadence and template kits for Spectra. So let's start with Spectra. So pages are obviously entire pages, and there's lots of premium ones. So where are the free ones? Where are the free ones? Okay, there we go. There's some free ones. You can choose different sections and pages. You can choose different categories, like about, heading, hero section, which is the top bit of the home page and sometimes of other pages as well. Wireframes, interesting. So that's the structure without the content. Let's choose a pattern for now. Choose a hero section. Okay, I quite like, I like that. So let's import that. And let's get rid of all this extra stuff. Okay, there we go. Let's just preview it properly, out of interest. So obviously we don't want that to appear. So in Gutenberg, try again. Still there, but anyway, let's ignore it. Let's ignore that for now. We can fix that another time. Okay, that's quite nice. Okay, so cover. We can change the focal point. Clear media, we can start over. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of that. Let's look at another one just very quickly. So template kit patterns. Okay. Let's go to pages actually. Okay, at least we've got some color now, so that's nice. So all the premium ones you'd have to pay for. Okay, can you preview? Let's try this. Okay, so different pages: about, contact, home page, what I do page, services page. So let's click on home, import home templates. Okay, some of these sometimes need to install other plugins, but hopefully that's not the case. Okay, so one empty paragraph, we can get rid of that. And then it's all containers all the way down. Let me close that just so we've got a bit more room. Okay, so just have a quick look what's going on. Container, container, container. Heading, heading, okay. All right, and let's see how it looks on tablet. That text should not be, you shouldn't have dark text on a black image, you can't read it. Or dark image, dark text on a dark image. Probably need to fix it. Actually, the image is, oh, it's probably because of this, to be honest. So, no, it doesn't. So that needs fixing. Text is over on top of the image, you can't read it. That needs fixing. But anyway, it's a nice shortcut. Let's look at mobile. Oh, that's not right, is it? Don't need that much margin. What's going on there? Yeah, I shouldn't have to do this much fixing for a template. It should just work. That's not good. Anyway. Something to play around with. Let's just do one more ad. Actually, no, let's go to desktop view. Let's clear the page. So let's get rid of all those. Go to design library this time. So patterns and pages. Okay, let's go to, let's just install one hero out of interest, and then let's install one page. But anyway, you get the idea. Let's close that so we've got a bit more room. Okay, pretty basic. Pretty basic. Just a column here with an image, then a headline and button and some text. How does it cope with tablet? Okay, it does actually rearrange itself, so that's good. And mobile, that's looking okay. So no major issues there, so that's good. I'm going to get rid of that and install, or import rather, a page. So page. Okay, let's see what we get when it loads. Eventually. Okay, let's see. Just trying to look for something interesting, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's pretty obvious what I'm doing. These aren't particularly interesting, are they, in my opinion? Quite bland designs. Gosh, I'm just looking for something interesting. Let's try services. Okay. This will have to do. Let's click on that. Okay, preparing content. Does it need any plugins? That's quite interesting. Apart from being all, having hardly any color at all. Alright, so how are we looking? Well, at least, yeah, it's just more interesting and doesn't seem to be any major issues. Let's look at the structure. So everything's rows, and then everything's sections, and then, okay, advanced text, advanced buttons. So rows are rows, sections are columns. Okay. Interesting. So there you go. So those are, and there's plenty more you can find online if you search. There's free ones and there's lots of paid ones. And it's a great way to learn how to structure pages, and it's a great shortcut. And I often use templates because, yeah, it's a shortcut. It looks good. I spend quite a bit of time sometimes looking for the right template, and it just shortcuts the entire process. Because I work as a technical consultant. I'm not a designer. I just don't have a designer's brain. I'm not an artistic person. So for me, unless I'm working with a designer or recreating an existing site, for example, a client recently had an old site, a very old site, and we were modernizing it and recreating it. So we basically copied the design, just made it more modern and made it responsive and so on. So that's fine. When I'm copying a design like that, I can deal with that, or I can work with templates, but I'm not a designer. So if you're not artistic, or if you just want to save time, templates are great. Or you work with a designer, you give them ideas, they present ideas, and then you turn those into a Gutenberg website. But I would say for a lot of small business websites, templates are a great time saver, a great way to get started, and then later, if you choose, you can create a new design from scratch. I find quite a few businesses waste time and money having a custom design made right at the start when it wouldn't benefit them really at all. It looks as good as a template or even not as good as a template. So that's my opinion anyway. So those are templates and page sections and how you can work with them in Gutenberg. Thank you so much. Thank you for making it to the end of this tutorial. I hope you found it interesting, helpful, and most important of all, actionable, that it actually helps improve your Gutenberg skills quickly. For your next steps, please feel free to take the following actions. Sign up for my free 10-day WordPress Fast Results course. You'll get an in-depth email every weekday, Monday to Friday, over 2 weeks, with a goal to help you get very productive in WordPress, achieve more from WordPress, and very importantly, make good technical decisions for your site for the long term. Follow or add me on LinkedIn. When adding me, let me know you watched one of my videos or tutorials, please. Subscribe to the Allport Solutions YouTube channel, in-depth and helpful videos published regularly. View other videos or courses I or the team have created, just search for Allport Solutions. See the tutorial description or resources for more details on all of that and how to sign up now. Thank you again for viewing and good luck with Gutenberg.